Morning, everybody. Today we're going to handle a brief look at new construction inspections. I am Rael with HomePro. My little background here is with the company for about 14 years and did about 4,000 inspections for the company. And at this point, I am doing some of these classes to teach and to share some knowledge with you all about different subjects when it comes to inspections, from foundation on up. And that's what we're really dealing with today, which is actually the new construction inspection. So let's see where it starts. Right in the beginning, of course, as an agent, you may have a client that wants to build a new home they found, or they're asking you to find a subdivision, or they have a piece of land available and they'd like to go ahead and see what it takes to get the process underway. And once they have the actual lot that they want, they have to go and apply to the city, the county, or the jurisdiction that they're in to get a building permit. Now, if they're dealing with a builder, then the builder will handle this for them. They certainly have perhaps an architect. Perhaps if it's a subdivision that's being built, there might be 3, 4, or 5 different variations of a particular home that's going to be built in that subdivision. And so then that gets a little bit more structured. But if it was just an individual single build on a single lot somewhere, we'll go ahead and have the architect draw the plans and move forward from there. You apply to the jurisdiction for the building permit, and once it's approved, they go ahead and we have a sign like this outside in the yard, which is for all the inspections. So inside this cover would be the inspections that would cover all the various stages of the building inspection. Okay, so let's deal with the 3 myths that the clients think about when you're talking about new construction inspections. Okay, so the city or county inspectors check the whole process from start to finish, and that's myth number 1. In actual fact, it's sort of done piecemeal. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's the same inspector doing every part of it. It might be one person who does perhaps foundations and framing. The other person would do electrical, a third person do plumbing, a fourth person do HVAC, and each of them has their own line or their own section on the inspection permit that they would sign off on. So it's not that there's one person that's totally responsible for the whole process from beginning to end. Okay, and so here we go. It's basically into phases. So as we just mentioned, foundation, framing, or structure, and then the mechanical. And when we deal with HomePro, then we can do the same inspections that they do, which is new construction. It's in a phase, again, one after the other, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, until we get through to the final inspection. So we can certainly do those. Other inspections that we do on new construction is just pre-drywall. When everything is actually installed and ready to be covered, we have a pre-drywall inspection. Then we could do another final inspection before closing to make sure that everything is actually functioning the way it should. Okay, so the big difference is between us and the city or county inspectors is that the city or the county inspections do not guarantee that there will be any, no structural defects in the building process, and they really are not liable. I actually looked this up again this past week, and in several counties and several areas, and even several different states. And it's basically that the county or the city inspectors are protected under the laws there, that they cannot be sued individually for any defects or things that they missed during the construction process. So it's really up to the client and the builder to sort it out when something does actually happen. So guess who's going to be in the middle of the situation? Well, of course, it's going to be you. So we want to eliminate those phone calls and that hassle. We'd like the process to go nice and smoothly. So let's be realistic about this. When we do a home inspection, we do 2 a day, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. But the city inspectors have about 25 to 30 to do each working day. So they're running really ragged, trying to cover all the bases to try to get everything done in any given day. And if you figure that if they leave their office at 9 a.m. or slightly before, the travel time, time for even 30 minutes for lunch, get back by 4 o'clock and still have to produce all the work that they've seen by the end of the day, you can imagine that there's really not a whole lot of time that was actually spent on site of the actual building itself. So this is what happens. They kind of rushing on through it, and who knows what the situation is going to be at the end of any given working day. So a personal example that I can share with you from back in 2018, where there were some brand new townhouses over here in Atlanta on DeKalb Avenue, where these new townhouses were being built. And I met the buyer there, and it was a very, very hot day in summer. And he didn't look happy at all. And I greeted him, and he obviously saw my truck with the signage from Home Probe there. And he started in with me right away. He said, I don't know why my agent would even suggest that I get a home inspector, a private home inspector, to come in and do what the county has been doing. All I'm looking for is my certificate of occupancy, and I'm done here and I'm ready to go. So I said to him, look, it's probably going to be over 120 degrees in the attic in this building, but if you don't want this inspection, no harm done. Just go ahead and call your agent, and let's be on speakerphone. And if the two of you tell me not to do this inspection, we will not do it. So he called the agent, and the agent, fortunately, was an agent who knew her way around real estate, and said, you absolutely get that inspector to do the inspection for you. And so he kind of grumpy, we went on into the building, and it was a 3-level townhouse. And the kitchen and sort of a living room area, the garage, it was all on the same level at the bottom. And I said, just walk with me and watch what I do. And so we did. And he followed me as I tested the faucets on the sink, and checked out every single electrical outlet, and opened and closed every window. So, went through the whole process. In actual fact, the ASHI standards, which is the standards that we use to do our inspections, requires us to do a representative number of any particular item there. What does that mean? That means that if there are 6 electrical outlets in the room, if we test 3, we've basically covered the ASHI standards. And what we do at Home Probe is that we will actually test them all. Simply, the reasoning is, well, if there's 1 electrical outlet that's not working, even though we tested 3, the one that we didn't test may be the one that's not operational. We don't want that call for you or for us, so we'll test them all. Anyway, the first level took about 45 minutes, and I was on my way up to the second floor, and he said, well, I'll just let you do your thing. And I went on up to the second floor, and he sat on the step with his cell phone, and everybody's happy. So I worked my way through the home, and it was just about total of 3 hours for the inspection, and came down and went through the process with him, explained to him what I'd found. In this particular case, it wasn't any big deal. There were a couple of small things to be taken care of. But one of the things that was necessary to be done was that there was low refrigerant on the air conditioning unit. So, to bear in mind that just when you buy a new car, when they ship the car from the factory, they don't fill the gas tank up all the way. They just put in maybe 1 gallon or so for it to be able to move on and off of the transportation truck. And the same pretty much works with air conditioning units. The outside compressors are not loaded up and filled up with refrigerant. They're just put in with minimal to get the machine actually working, but it needs to be topped up by the contractor that installs it. So this one was low. And it's a fairly common thing with new construction that we find this. And so that was in the report. And so he thanked me for being so thorough and to explain everything to him. And he left. And I finished up, I was working on a laptop, and I was finishing up my notes. and I went outside to my vehicle because the air conditioning was a lot better in my vehicle than it was in the unit. And while I was there, lo and behold, the county inspector actually showed up to do the certificate of occupancy. So he's parked out in front of the building, and I'm getting out of my vehicle to go over and introduce myself when he left. So in actual fact, he spent about 20 seconds in front of the home, and off he went, not even entering into the property. And that evening, we had gotten a text to say that it had gotten the certificate of occupancy, everything was ready to go. But the whole idea of the certificate of occupancy is for the inspector to go inside and to make sure there are no loose gas connections, waters are not running anywhere. Basically walk through and make sure that everything is in good shape to go. And this one did not happen. So bearing in mind that the county will not hold their inspectors liable, and neither can the buyer. It's just really important to bear in mind that particular thing, and that to have a private inspector is the way to go. So myth number 2 that we'll cover is really that we'll be covered by the builder's warranty for 1 year after closing, and that's all that I need. Well, it's somewhat of a myth. Yeah, they will go ahead and cover that first year, but what about a structural defect that may not show up in that first year? So example, again, did an inspection on a home in Sandy Springs here in Georgia, a $2 million home. And the trusses, as you can see in the picture above, were engineered trusses. Now, this is a wonderful innovation that's happened over time. Instead of just using pine floor joists and ceiling joists, now trusses are being made, engineered wood, and we're able to have rooms that have so much bigger span or larger rooms without posts or without extra support in them. And as long as these structural sections are put in, then these trusses can give us a terrific large room, family rooms, etc. And we don't have to have any obstructions in them. But the big issue is that we may need to make sure that these trusses are actually supported correctly. Right now, I can also tell you that no home inspector from the county gets into crawl spaces that I've seen over my 14 years. The way it's done is that everything is inspected before the floors are covered with plywood or oriented strand board. They're looked at from the top. So when it's actually being dug out and before the concrete is poured, that's the 2 parts that are looked at from the foundation section. And then the floor and the framing section comes in at this point right here. So what happens is over time, we have a 2-story building and you've got these trusses in there. Well, in actual fact, the truss wasn't supported on the one end of the home. So you literally have a 40-foot span with a huge truss in there, like you see in the picture above, but it doesn't drop automatically right at the beginning. It starts to sag slowly and slowly and slowly. And as it starts to move, that's when we see the issue. So you see the bottom picture here where the engineered floor truss actually has started to settle, and you can see where the level is where the bottom of that level should be where the floor should be located. And instead of that, it's several inches that it has actually sagged. Some clues to this would have been doors, jams that wouldn't, doors that wouldn't open and close properly, windows that were out of square, etc. And this is a pretty significant issue right here. Okay, so let's look at this. As I mentioned, they don't get into crawl spaces. So here we see the main beam over here at the top. You can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of wood right there and some plywood in between to form the main beam. And because during the construction phase, they moved the location of the vent in the actual foundation, that was supposed to be the area that the beams were actually resting on. Instead of that, it was resting on one piece of 2x4. So imagine all that weight was sitting on top of that one piece of 2x4, and the house had just passed the local municipal code inspection. After final inspection, closing and moving in, the clients had no power in the master bathroom. So again, they're not testing everything that we are. And so there was a new construction electrical issue. So this had to be resolved as well. All right. So new homes, the myth is that new homes don't have any defects at all. And of course, we've learned over time that they do. So what actually happens then? Well, do you know anybody that's bought a car that was 11? And I do. That's just a bad manufacturer, or that was maybe a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock when it's coming down the line and everybody's ready to go home for the weekend. So you never want to buy a car that's if you can figure it out, that's built on a late Friday afternoon or an early Monday morning. You're likely to have some issues there. Okay, so priorities do change, after closing. So after the closing, it's all out of the way. The buyer's in the home, and the builder and the subcontractors have all been paid. So really, how much motivation is there to put the client with the problem at the front of the line for repairs? Let's face it, once the closing's taken place, what actually happens is they're all trying to get the next house finished and sold and closed. So that's where the resources are going to be spent. And that can be extremely frustrating for your buyers. And they're constantly, calling up to you, what is going on? Why aren't they taking care of me? And at that point, you're kind of a little bit out of the loop already. But in order to maintain your good name and certainly look for referrals from your client, you probably want to try to put some pressure onto the builder and see what could be done to get issues resolved. And if you've got a good builder and if you've got folks that are taking care of everybody, it's not that big of a deal. But unfortunately, that's the exception rather than the rule. Okay, so kind of let's look at how these things are done, the examples actually of new construction issues. So important comment about how we actually lay out our inspection report. So the description and the recommendations and limitations are the three sections of our inspection report that give you the insight in what the inspection is actually telling us. So the description tells the client what's there, like the appliances, the HVAC, the hot water heater, etc. And again, everything is being tested if it's connected. So if the water is connected, we'll be checking the faucets, etc., and the drain lines. If the HVAC is connected, we'll be checking the heat and the cooling and all the appliances. So if the client asks you either on new construction or on a resale, did they look at A, B, C, D? You can say, well, look at the description, and the description will tell you what was there when they were there. So if there was an appliance there, like a stove or an oven that's gas, was it tested? Yeah, there'll be a picture in there. If there was something that was not working correctly, there would be a recommendation. So the recommendation tells the client about the repair or the placement, or if it needs some further evaluation. And then limitations, which is the most overlooked area of the report, is what we could not see or test. Right. And so I think, a lot of folks just go to the summary section and they look into the summary section and say, oh, okay, that's it. The summary section breaks down into what should be done, but it actually doesn't tell us what we couldn't see, because that would be under the limitation section. So it's really important whenever you do read a report, that's not just the description recommendations, but limitations are really important too. So here we are. Let's look at some of those limitations. The gas was turned off. So it also affects the water heater if it's a gas unit. The gas to the home was turned off at the time of the inspection. And while there may be comments regarding the gas appliances, they could not be inspected. After confirming that the gas has been turned on, just contact our office to arrange for one of our inspectors to come back to the property for a revisit, and that would be at no charge. Cooling in the heat pump, okay? The AC, it was too cold to test. So the AC is not operated when we're outside when the outside temperature is below 50 degrees. So the belief is actually that refrigerant in the compressor turns to liquid at low temperature, and that's known as slugging. So you can imagine that instead of a gas, it's like a liquid, and now the liquid has to be forced through the compressor, and it takes a lot more of the actual motor pushing to get that refrigerant through. And what happens is the motor burns out. It's not designed to take that pressure as liquid instead of gas. So when you know the temperature will be above 50 degrees, again, we can contact the office, and we could send somebody out there to recheck it. Alternative, you may consider consulting with an HVAC technician that may have expertise and specialized equipment to test the appliance in colder temperatures. Also, in this particular picture, there's a condominium, and the air compressors were on the roof. So it was a matter of having to go up onto the roof after we had done the inspections. And in the rest of the areas, so the electrical and everything else that was done inside the unit, when we got up onto the roof, we found out why there was no cooling was because the actual compressor was not present at all. So either it had never been installed, or it had been removed there prior to the inspection. All right. So how would it be, reported? Inadequate cooling. In this particular case, it was electrical. So the breaker to the upstairs air conditioning unit is off. Now, it was not off before the unit was tested, so the breaker tripped during normal operation. So there's no cooling on the top floor. And a typical example of that is what we just talked about, was turning on the air conditioner unit, and then the motor having to work so hard that it started to heat up, and then the electrical short happens and it trips the breaker. So we need to have a qualified HVAC technician to evaluate that as soon as possible. It's probably going to be minor, but depends on the preferred remedy of repair. So why would you think that the inspector wouldn't just reset the breaker and then try it again to see what would work? Well, the reason is we're not quite sure why the breaker tripped. So perhaps it was a nail through some drywall that went in through the electrical wiring that came down to the panel from the air conditioning unit, or it might have been the overloaded circuit from the air conditioning unit trying to work and got hot and therefore tripped that breaker. So we'd want somebody that's an expert on HVAC to come in and evaluate the issue. All right, plumbing, again, water service is not on. So I'm sure that you're all diligent about, when the inspections are about to take place, that you check with the other side and say, well, hey, are all the services on, water, electricity, and gas? And usually it'll come back, yep, we checked it yesterday and it was fine. But in between, what's happened is the utility companies have come out and shut down one or more of the utilities. In this particular case, the water was shut off, and we cannot go and turn it on at the street. We don't know why it was turned off. Why it was turned off may have been just, well, they no longer paid the bill, so it stopped there. Number two, there might have been a leak somewhere that showed up and they turned it off at the street. So we're not going to go turning it back on in case we're going to cause major damage. Could have been during the wintertime too, when some pipes might have frozen. And if we turn it on again, we might cause some damage. So what will happen then is we'll request that the water is actually turned back on. And then again, we would come back out and finish the inspection at no charge. And bear in mind, the rest of the inspection would be totally done. Everything would be in place except for the physical turning on and off of the water, which we would need to see that the faucets were working and not leaking, and certainly the drainage the same way. So that's how that would be approached. Again, gas was not on, so the range is not tested as the gas was off, and the dishwasher and waste disposal were not tested because there was a breaker that was tripped and that was off as well. So in another case, the oven range condition, it was inoperative because the gas meter was not installed. So, check back after the installation of the gas meter sometime prior to closing, and then we can check the working of the gas appliance. In this particular case, you can see here, again, new construction, of course, and to protect the floors, they put down a whole lot of paper, and so a lot of the floor was not visible. Even brand new construction as well, up in the attic, the vent from the furnace was not exiting the property, is actually going up. Okay, sorry folks, technical difficulties, so to speak, or operator error, one of the two. But when we do new construction, when we build, we don't really know what the results are going to be when we do get some rain. And in this particular case, we see that there's been some water intrusion. So we would report that, water on the floor, etc., consult with the foundation or waterproofing company as soon as possible. So we have that. Furnace, even simple things like a filter, the condition was dirty, giving the operating condition of the system, surfacing is recommended. Each attic HVAC furnace replaced as soon as possible and regularly thereafter. It's a regular maintenance item. Filters get clogged with dust from drywall finishing, something simple like that. Really important when on new construction, because they don't go in and actually suck out the dirt from the ducts. They might do some cleanup around the registers, but a good deep duct cleaning would be a good idea. You can see in this particular case here, we have a heat pump, and you can see how white the filter is. And these are not really the best quality filters either. You're best to get a quality fabric filter, change them out every 90 days. Electrical box, grounding, etc. So we see the top left-hand corner here. We've got a ground rod that was pretty old school. Ground rod driven in 6 feet into the ground. I got a clamp on there from the electrical meter, and there we go. Stepped up a little bit after that to be actually grounded to the water line. That was pretty a pretty good way to do it, and easy, all the way through the 70s and 80s, when a lot of copper galvanized piping, etc., were used for water piping. But a lot of the new construction these days, unless we're getting into the higher price points, is now plastics. It's either CPVC or we're dealing with PEX. And join us one time if you see a webinar on plumbing. You can join in. We'll cover that in more detail. But what happened then is the grounding was no longer there once the galvanized steel and the copper were no longer available. So what we use now is what we call a UFER, UFER, which you can see on the left bottom corner, which is actually a piece of rebar that's installed in the actual foundation concrete itself. And the electrical connections are made to that piece of rebar, and then we're all good to go with that. Another one with an air conditioning, a compressor, the disconnect inside the cover is missing. So this is the inside of an electrical disconnect box on the exterior of the home. And just as we do in an electrical panel on the interior of the home, there is a cover so that you don't see the electrical wiring that's actually open and visible and actually can be accessed. There should be a cover in here to protect anybody from putting their hands inside, and that was missing. So we needed to have one put in there. And then something so silly, it's just the way the insulation is put in, it's reversed. So we were looking at the paper side instead of the pink or the yellow side of the insulation. Again, in new construction, of course, we go and you can see they don't even have the electrical plate covers up there, and the dishwasher is not installed. So we could not inspect that. So that would be under limitations. Also, looking at the porches and the deck, that's a really important factor here. We can see that they just have some nails. You know, back in the day, they used to nail with a hammer and a long nail, and now it's all air guns shooting these small, like little spikes in to take the place of the nails. You can see there are multiple ones there, but there are actually so there are actually hangers or specific types of material to strengthen that, and they are missing. So we recommended over here a weak connection at the top of the landing. Inadequate connections, we should go ahead and have that taken care of. Sometimes we have an architectural thing where they've put in horizontal handrail guards, and so they are definitely climbable, and little people can climb these things up and fall over the top of them. So again, here's another one. This is actually more solid, but it's the same sort of thing, that they can be climbed. These are actually just missing the hand balusters on the incomplete over there. And then, stovetop vents, the vent hoods that come through, they don't always get exited of the attic space. They should be taken out either through the roof or over through the overhang or the soffits, instead of all that grease and all that moisture which comes out into the attic space. Very common also for bathroom vents from the shower when the moisture comes on up through from below into the attic space, which is a great place for other issues to take place. Of course, leak locations, when we walk the roof, we do different types of roof inspection. If we physically cannot get onto the roof, we employ drones to go up and take the pictures for us of the roof surface. In this particular case, we see here that we're missing some of our flashings, so that would need to be installed. Missing drains for the water heater, just like we had for the washing machine earlier. There's a pan here, but there's no drain. So again, there would be an issue where if the water heater failed, the water would flow out from this pan and cause damage on the floor. Pull down stairs for the attic. Here we are. Attic space is very difficult to access due to the low slope of the roof structure at the access hatch. So also the opening is too small. So if you had to remove the HVAC equipment, it wouldn't really be possible. And it's located in the attic, and we're going to go ahead and have them to correct that. Just a look at what happens when areas are not vented correctly, whether it be a foundation or in the attic space. Great space for mold to grow is warm, damp locations. And we see a representative photo of what that looks like there. Here we are, we're testing, of course, showers and tubs. And so we would tell them exactly where it is. There's a slow drain, and that could be a couple of things. Either there's trash down in the drain, it didn't drain all the way out, or in the worst case scenario, there wasn't enough slope in the actual shower stall here to have the water drain out and instead of forming a puddle inside of the shower itself. So we also do thermal imaging. And thermal imaging is available both for new construction and resale. Slight upcharge for that. It's around $265. During new construction, when the whole water system is in waste tested, the leaks can be detected and repaired before the closing. We also have a webinar on thermal imaging. Also, we're doing a lot more even on new construction with radon tests. So that's something to consider. Again, there's a webinar on that you can look for. Better to get it, done before closing than after. The second largest cause of lung cancer, of course, after smoking, is radon. And we also now offer sewer scope at $265, especially useful on resale of older homes. So yeah, that's pretty much covers it here. And this is the case for thermal imaging. I did an inspection on a home, brand new construction, working my way from the top down. I was looking at the toilet, and I lifted the tank top off, and I saw steam coming out of the toilet. And when I flushed it, of course, there was hot water in the bowl as well. So when we see this, we can take a picture of it, and we can show that there is actually hot water. And this actually happened to be a situation where the actual water supply was on CPVC, and it was crossed over during construction. Subcontractors sometimes are just picking up guys at the home fix-it store, a parking lot, and getting them to help out on any given day. And this needed a lot of repair. There was no thermal imaging available at the time to do the inspection and to be checked. So this had to actually find, by breaking out some drywall until the crossover could be found. Again, talked about radon. So the hoops that we have to go through for the build is that we all have to be, we have to have the code certified inspectors, and they're all of them comply to the International Residential Code, which is throughout the US. And we all have to have qualified inspectors, and we all have to carry insurance. Not everybody does. All right, so what next? Well, upcoming topics will be, luxury agents talk about home inspections and how we inspect a luxury property, and the ins and outs of pool inspection. So all of these items are available at the Home Probe Academy. You can go to home-probe.com and check out all these wonderful offers here, and get to see a lot of the expertise that we employ. And Barbara, do you have any other comments?
No, that's it. If you guys go to the Realtor training section of the website, like he said, luxury inspections is what we're highlighting for June, and you can sign up for the whole series with one click. And we hope to teach you about that coming up in June.
Okay.
That's it. Thanks, Rael.
Sure thing. I mean, obviously, the offer that if there was something that anybody wanted to ask, could pop a question into the chat or the Q&A, and I'll be happy to answer it. If not, we're done. I guess we are done. Thanks, everybody.